Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi my friends, welcome to another weekly wrap up. I think we're up to week 16 and I'm so excited. I got through a good amount of books this week, which is great. The couple weeks before I was feeling kind of overwhelmed with a few things and didn't get through as many as I want to, but I'm feeling better today for sure. We're already in the last few days of April, which is insane. My weekly wrap up will be going up soon. And then next week, there won't be a weekly wrap up because I will be at the North Iowa Book Bash, getting to see Pam Godwin and Jennifer Hartman and be there with my bestie Shauna. And I'm just so excited. It's going to be amazing. But this week we still have some wonderful books to talk about. But first we have to do a few thank yous. I have two new patrons to welcome, and they are Jeanette and Alicia Renee. Thank you both so much for choosing to support me on Patreon. YouTube, with the content that I make, is not always the most consistent with ad revenue. So if you're liking what I do, you know, going over and checking out my Patreon, there are free trials you can get of some of the different levels, and I do highly recommend you do that if you can, because the book that I'm going to talk about that was the April read was fantastic, and the only place you can find out my full thoughts about that is on my Patreon, so keep that in mind. A free trial will actually get you access to that for this month anyway. And then I have two new channel members. One person is definitely not new to me, but she is new to channel membership. We have Megan C. Thank you so much. I sure love my Megans. I have quite a few Megans who support me, and I don't know what it is. I just get a kick out of it. But Megan C has been a supporter for a very long time, but she has finally crossed over to channel memberships as well. And then Kayla R. Thank you both so much for supporting me in all these ways. It all adds up and it helps me keep the wheels turning, and you know, sink or swim, I'm doing it with you guys, and I love that so much. Also, another way to support me is of course through my Etsy shop, which I always have a link to down below. I have some really beautiful items that have just been sitting there waiting to go home with you, right? I have some of my extra large book sleeves in right now. There's this beautiful flower and bee design. This fits a hardback, or I always say it fits a hardback or like the large paperback that like the Outlander books are. What a better case to put your Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone than one of these. I have this beautiful rose flower design, and I do still have one of the Beauty and the Beast extra large ones left as well. Then something new that I've added recently is actually computer cases, computer sleeves as it were, and I have two of those currently left right now. I only make a few of these at a time, and once they sell, I pick a few new designs to make. So this one I actually did do a faith-based one. I don't do much of that. This is the first design I've done that's actually faith-based. It says faith, hope, and love on it. This is great. It will fit a device that is, this device is like a 13 by 10, a 12 by 10 about, so it will fit that. This would also fit a super large hardback if you want, maybe some Sarah J. Maas, but it's built more for being a computer device. And then I still do have one of these beautiful rainbow music notes. I love this design. I definitely made one of these for myself. And then of course I have the other sides of sleeves that are there. So check out my Etsy. That definitely helps support me as well. And I have a link down below as well as a coupon code that is always available for you guys. Also an extra bonus, my patrons actually get a free shipping code. So if you're a patron and you didn't know about that, definitely look up the Etsy tag on my Patreon, because there is a code to get you free shipping there for sure. So, all right, that is enough. Let us get into talking about these books, because I think we have 11 to talk about, and so we're gonna go. All right, the first one that I finished is actually Older by Jennifer Hartman. So yeah, this is her newest release, and I definitely wanted to read it before going to North Iowa Book Bash because I want her to sign this one for me. Ooh, also, this is a bookmark from Ginger Snaps. She sent me some of these that are just so cute. This one says romance reader. Anyway, I'll link her down below if I remember. She has some beautiful, I have lots of stickers from her and stuff too. But anyway, this is her newest one. I also read this for an upcoming episode of my podcast that I have with Tara. It is called Sassy Romance Chats Podcast. I don't talk about that a lot, but I have a monthly podcast where we talk about romance and only positive things. We only talk happy things that are happening and what brings us joy. And we are doing age gap romances for April. And I was like, well, this is the perfect reason to squeeze this one in, because I didn't end up with an arc of this book, which again was totally fine. I have more than enough arcs to keep me happy. But this book was very interesting because it actually is a little bit of a throwback, which I want to ask her why she chose to do that when I meet her. It takes place in the 90s for the most part, which I thought was really interesting. Like, it starts in 1995 when our heroine is actually 17, and she meets our hero Reed. The heroine's name is Haley. She meets him at a neighborhood party where he's actually there looking for his daughter, who is the same age as Haley. Now, she happens to be out by the lake, kind of just sitting out there, and we'll find out more about her in a second. But Reed comes out there, he's looking for his daughter, and she lies and says that she's 21. Now, Reed is 35 at this time, and they just have this crazy connection together. They start talking. There's this, just this connection that they have that's just so simple. And they end up, he finds out that his daughter is safe and where she is, and they just keep talking for the night, and they end up kind of fooling around, and he invites her back to his place. But before that can happen, she gets outed for the fact that she's not 21, she's 17. And there's not a big confrontation that happens or anything, but Reed is just like, whoa. You know, there's a big difference between 21 and 17 when you're a 35-year-old, you know. I mean, there is when you're 17 too. There's a big difference. But so he just is like, whoa. And he walks away and is like, oh my God, that was almost really bad. But then we find out some more about Haley, and she's actually in an abusive home. This book actually starts with her being beaten by her father, so be prepared for seeing some abuse happen. For the most part, it's usually referenced, but there is some of that. There is also just some really cruel things that this father has done to her. But where that leads us to, and what most of this story is that Haley has actually met Tara, who is Reed's daughter, but doesn't know that that is her father because he has just recently moved there to be closer to his daughter. He has a good relationship with his baby mama. They were never really a thing. They had, I don't think it was a one-night stand, but they were just kind of like casual hookups who, you know, had a kid and they never got married, but they co-parent very well together. And he has recently moved to be closer. He is a jiu-jitsu coach, and he actually owns his own like studio for that, so that's kind of cool. That's an aspect that comes in later. I think jiu-jitsu is actually very fascinating, and it's something that I've secretly kind of always wanted to learn more of, but I've been too chicken to do it because I know it's very hard, and you know, I know I can do hard things, but sometimes you don't want to, right? But anyway, and Haley, her father finally goes too far one night and she gets very hurt. And so Tara and her mom don't live that far away from her home. And so she ends up going to their home, and she comes in and she is hurt. She has a broken arm. She's bleeding. She fell into a glass coffee table. And the mom is just like, you are not safe there. You're not going back. And I really did care for this mom. I totally just spaced on what the mom's name is. I don't know if it'll pop up. Either way, she's a very good woman. She really is. And I appreciated that. And so she steps up and ends up being like a foster parent for her in a way. And so Haley moves in. And not long after she's moved in, of course, Reed happens to come for a family dinner. He's going to be coming to dinners a couple times a month, and he hasn't been there yet. And he comes in and he sees Haley. And now Haley had just recently figured this out before him as well. and now is just like, oh shit, like this is gonna be awkward. But he sees her and he's just horrified because not only did this woman lie to him about her age, he was really into her. And now it's his daughter's best friend who is underage. And he's just pretty horrified by this. So then we get to the next few years of just angst. Like there's a lot of angst of longing and of not being able to have each other. So I've said enough. A lot of the book is that and about how they're going to get together. Now, when I initially finished this book, I gave it a higher rating than I did because it was very beautiful. In my opinion, this isn't the most emotional book that Jennifer Hartman has written. It's not even the most painful one that she's written, but she does still do some angsty things, right? There are still some painful parts to these characters' lives, and there's still parts where you want to cry and your guts come out. And you guys know me. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you're new to the channel, but you know me. Usually a book that makes me cry, and not from anger. Sometimes I cry from anger, and then it's not a good thing for anyone. But usually if a book makes me cry, I'm rating it highly because I like when books can make me feel emotion and can make me feel that engaged, right? If I'm bored, if I'm not feeling anything for the characters, then you didn't do a great job with your story, right? That's how I feel. And it doesn't always have to be that I would cry or laugh even, but just like I want to feel emotionally connected to characters, right? And I really felt that with this. But once it was done, and honestly, in talking with a couple of my friends through it, there were just some things that really stuck out, and they weren't ones that I could just brush off, because you'll see this with me, like a lot of times, if there's things I really love, I'll brush off the things that I don't, but there's just a few things that bother me. So when I have an age gap this big, and particularly when it's a forbidden one, okay, I want the younger person, whoever it is, usually it is a woman, usually we're reading that, I need her to be very mature. And there are aspects of Haley that were very mature. You know, she's had to grow up quickly. She's been taking care of herself. She's never had anyone to lean on. But she had some very risky behavior and put Reed in some very untenuous situations that were reckless of her to do. You know, he has a lot on the line as well. And he seemed to be the only one thinking about her future, right? She was just constantly pushing to make things work with him. And he's pointing out these things that don't just have to do with her age. And again, I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but there's some things that will put her in a tough position that don't just have to do with her being younger than him. It has to do with other stuff, you know, which you can probably infer by the fact that this is his daughter's best friend, right? And living there, right? It isn't just where, like, it's his daughter's best friend at school or something. Like, no, she lives in the house with his daughter even. So there's just a lot. So that got on my nerves. And then also something that happened, I thought that the buildup was wonderful. Like the chemistry they had, and it was great. And you were just like, oh, just fucking kiss already and like just get to it. But once they did, this relationship became purely sexual. They lost all of the beautiful conversations and the connections and the swoon that I was feeling before. This is a personal feeling. Like once they started the fucking happening, it was like just that's the only thing we cared about and putting everything at risk to have it happen. And I didn't love that as much. And then I was just waiting for the fallout because I knew there was going to have to be some just with the type of story it is. So yeah, it was just a lot. So I've talked about this one enough. So like I said, I originally gave this a 5. I'm settling it at a 4 because when I think back on it, number one, I don't really ever want to read this one again, which I feel like would put it at the higher levels. And then again, when I look back now after finishing it, I wanted the heroine to be a bit wiser and not only have to have the hero be the adult, right? Because otherwise it feels like he's with a child then, you know, and I don't want to think that of Reed. I thought he was a great character. I thought that he had his priorities in the right place really the whole time. And that's why it was so like important that he resist, right? So I didn't want him to appear to be the only adult in the room when he's falling for a young person. That makes it feel awkward. So this was still really good. I think you'll see a lot of people rate this super highly. But you know me too, like my angst versus HEA factor is always a balance that I'm looking at. And this one, being Jennifer Hartman, like it tipped more in the other way for me, but still very good. I mean, and look at this book. I can't wait to have her sign it. I put the stamp on it, which means I'm keeping it for sure. And yeah, it was good. We can't talk that long for every book, Jen. What are we doing? Okay, next up, I had an arc that I read earlier than I should have, but I don't care. I read Homestead by Clare Kent. Because it doesn't matter how many other arcs or how many other things I need to get to. When Clare Kent drops a book for me, I am going to read that. I'm going to be on it like white on bread, okay? I'm there, all right? Like sunburn on an Irish girl. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's the truth. It's the truth. So this one is book 7 in the Kindled series, and this is about Jimmy and Chloe. And I've very much been looking forward to this one since Claire gave us the tropes and stuff that were in the last 3, because when she announced the last 3 books, she told us kind of like the tropes and everything. And so this one is basically an arranged marriage. It's a marriage of convenience. Well, marriage of convenience is better than arranged marriage. So in this one, we are, what is it, 9 years after Impact? 7? Now I can't remember. I think we're like 9 years after Impact, and Chloe is 23, and we meet her and her grandpa just very briefly, of course, so we don't even get a chance to feel too close to him. But we find out that Chloe and her grandfather have been isolated this whole time. Her grandpa was a prepper. In this series, we love prepper grandpas and dads for sure. And so they had this home in the woods that was pretty self-sustaining. It's only just now, again, 9 years after Impact, that they're going to need to start scavenging. And so her and her grandpa are out on one of their ATVs. But what they don't know, because they haven't seen a single person, right? She hasn't seen a single person other than her grandpa since her parents died very early on. Is that the territory that their home is in, which nobody has found them out there, but it is literally in this no man's land between the wolf packs, which if you've read through the series at this point, you know who that is. That's the roving gangs who go around raping and pillaging and whatever. And then a safer zone. And her and her grandpa don't know that. And so, you know, they're just, of course they're going to be cautious about people, but they end up getting themselves right smack dab in the middle of something. And so her grandfather gets shot, and she's just shook. And this man named Jimmy happens to be the one who's patrolling for his group of survivors at the time, because they have noticed the wolf pack starting to get more. They have people watching to make sure they're not making it all the way over there. And so Jimmy ends up bringing her back to the main home, which is his parents' home. He's the son of this couple that owns a big farm, and they actually have like chickens, and there's some family members there's some community members who have cows. And so they're basically, what this felt like to me, and what I think a lot of you guys might like, is this very much felt like a historical Western of some type. Really, it did, because you're stripped back to the basics. There's no technology. You're having to rely on each other. You're sharing goods. You're sharing work. You know, because only one of the families like has a cow, but everybody shares things. Like they have eggs, so they share their eggs to get their milk and butter and everything, and they collectively will go from farm to farm to help with harvest and stuff. So it just has all those things, right? So Chloe ends up at this home, and for a few weeks she is just there getting acquainted. They're showing her the ropes. She's given her chores, and she is so like worried about getting put out that she is working so hard. And Jimmy happens to be one of the only single men, really the only single man who's like under 50 there. And he approaches her a few weeks after she's got there, and he literally makes a proposal to her and asks if she would, he's like, I need a woman. And she's like, you know, at first she's a little confused because she doesn't realize that he's asking her. So at first off, he's like listing all the things he has. He's like, I have a little homestead that's my own. I have some chickens. I have some farmland of my own. And she's kind of like, okay, what are you telling me? Because she's assumed that he would be with one of the other ladies who's been there longer. But Jimmy thinks she's just real pretty, and he thinks she works real hard, and he wants her. So you could see what I mean. This feels very historical. So she thinks about it, and she's like, so what's the trade-off? And I mean, he's honest. He's like, I don't just want like a worker. I'm looking for a partner. I'm looking for a woman. And so she's like, okay. So she knows, she's like, okay, well, I'd be trading my body and my work for a safe place and food and home. And she's like, that's the times we live in now. I'm not going to be worried about that. So she agrees. And so there's, you know, there's not really a ceremony or a crazy thing that happens. She just is, she goes and moves in with Jimmy. And now we begin her time getting used to him and everything. So in the classic Clare Kent way, if you've read her, you know, of course we're going to get right to the sex, because that is kind of the point of this transaction, which she is very much seeing as a transaction. And he's seeing it as like, it's a mutual thing to him. Like, he just as much wants her, not just for her body, but he's lonely. He wants a person. He thinks that she's a good one. And so, you know, sweet Jimmy. Like, I don't even know what to say. He's just so sweet. So yes, we're having a first like awkward wedding night, and we're having them getting used to each other and figuring out their patterns. But what is hard in this one, and it's hard to see it happen, is that Chloe is very insecure about her position, and so she feels like she can never complain about anything. She feels like she can never have many suggestions for anything, and that isn't anything Jimmy put on her. It's all her feeling that way. So there's a lot of complex emotions that come with that, but it's also still like really beautiful to see how it's very clear that Jimmy is like falling for her. So yeah, this series is not for everyone. I know I talk about it all the time, but it is a simpler type of series. This is a dystopian world, but it falls back to the most simple aspects of life, because, you know, once you get a certain point past the end of the world, like, what else is there, you know? And that's what this series is about. It's love at the end of the world. It's like, once you get past the fight or flight, if you don't have love, if you don't have connection, like, what are you even doing, right? Okay, we're only 2 books in. I need to chill a little bit. We have a lot of books to talk about, but I gave this 5 stars. I don't care. If you would actually like to read this early, Clare Kent has this up on NetGalley. She usually accepts pretty much everyone, because not a ton of people read hers. So if you are someone who would read and review this, you can go and snag this on NetGalley if you want. Homestead is available. Also, if you were someone who watched my video about where to get free books, Wordsmith Publicity is the PR company that does Clare Kent and Noelle Adams, her other pen name, her arcs. So if you're interested in having some of her books and being on a review team of sorts for hers, you definitely could go there. So I'm actually on Clare Kent's review team. I have been for the past, like, well, whenever I read Embers, she invited me onto her team. So I've been a part of her team for all that time. But she usually puts her books up on NetGalley or through Wordsmith if you're interested in that. So yeah, I gave this 5 stars. It's a 3 on the spice scale for me. There's lots of sex in it. It's lots of awkward, fun, getting to know each other sex. And there's a few surprises baked into this one, as well as very much we're setting up Beacon, which will be, she said, the last book in the Kindle series, but she may be doing a spin-off of these. It just depends on how she feels. And I'm very excited that she would do that. I don't ever want her to leave this world. Although I would be interested if she was ever done with the Kindle series, like what books she would write next under Clare Kent, because that's her sci-fi and dystopian title, whereas Noelle Adams is all of her contemporary books. So I'd be very interested in what she would do next if she didn't. But I mean, I love this series to pieces, but she definitely sets up Beacon in this one. So you can also read this one if you love like I said, if you love like a Western marriage of convenience, you might like this. The only time that this one connects with the other books, this one is very much like an isolated story. You could dive right into this one if you wanted to. Is at the very end, we connect with Mac, who, if you've read the series, you know that Mac is someone who we've been waiting for his book the whole time. And she said a while back that Mac and his woman, Anna, would be the last couple. And there's some things that happens to Mac at the end of this one that is setting it up. There's also some hints at something that might be going on in the world bigger outside of here, and I'm very intrigued with like if that will be the fight in the next book or if that will be a spin-off thing. I don't know, but I loved this. I love her books. There you go. Moving on to the next one. All right, then I guess the next couple I'll talk pretty quick about these, so it'll be good. Next up, I read Kings and Bones by Juliet Cross. This is actually within The Lovely Dark, which, by the way, hardly anyone has read The Lovely Dark. This just came out. You need to read this. If you love Zoe Draven, if you love Juliet Cross, you need to read these, okay? You do. Also, Emma Hamm. I haven't read any Emma Hamm, but I only read Juliet's novella so far because I will be getting one of the hardcovers of these books, and I want to actually have books to read within it. They had these special editions of the hardcover that were available for pre-order. If you went to a Polycon, you can actually get one of them there, right? But the Kings and Bones story in here is actually a novella within her upcoming world, which will have the Wraith King in it. Now, originally with her writing schedule, Wraith King was supposed to come out in January. Now, that book wasn't quite ready, and she had other commitments where she had to write a book for Bramble, and she needed to get started on the spinoff of Stay a Spell, and she also had some other things to work on. So instead of just being able to finish that and have it come out soon, it had to be pushed to, I believe it's coming in September now, because she had to write that other book first. So this was supposed to be like a novella that we would already be kind of introduced to the world a little bit. But in this case now, this is our intro to the world. And I think that's fine. I think novellas are a great way to do that. But in this one, we get introduced to Murgda, who is a half fae. And she's with her... her mother had disappeared a few years ago. Recently, her sister has disappeared. And so she's still with her abusive father. And in the beginning of this book, her father actually puts her up in a bet. He uses her as collateral in a bet. And we have Valen, who is this dark fae, who comes along and wins her in this bet. And then is taking her with him. Now, he had some serious reasons for doing that. One of the hints might be Juliet usually writes fated mates, so, that might be a possibility happening. But we start to get introduced to the Dark Fae and what matehood might look like in this world, and just, we get some hints at, like, there's a mention of some kings and stuff in here, so I'll be interested to see what that means for the Wraith King. But definitely go check this out. I believe the beautiful copies are all sold. We can't get any more of those. But definitely get this if you love Juliet Cross and Zoe Draven. I haven't read her story yet because I'm waiting for the physical book. Juliet's the one who sent me an ARC, so it was most important that I read her story. But I believe it's supposed to be within the Kings of Drakkar world. I think this one is, because she's going to be doing the spin-off for that. I could be completely off base. Correct me if you've read it and I'm wrong. But either way, even if that one's not, I know the next series she's writing is a spin-off of the Horde Kings of Drakkar. And also, if you didn't know, she has a Kickstarter going for her Horde Kings of Drakkar. I actually did the level where you get 2 books because I just don't have as much spendable money as I used to. And I don't love all of them in the series the same, so I'm just going to pick 2 of them to get. But you can get hardcovers of her books, which look beautiful. So I gave, of course, the little short story, I gave it 5 stars. Come on, it's Juliet. Unless I absolutely hate it, it's always going to be a good rating for me. And there's just a little bit of spicy spice in that one to get us started. All right, next up, I actually read a graphic novel that I have been waiting for like 4 years. That's maybe an exaggeration, but it's at least 2. And it's one called Fine Print, and I cannot pronounce the author's name, author and illustrator, so I'm not even gonna try. I believe that it is it Norwegian or Swedish, or I don't even know. I couldn't even pretend to describe it, but I read Fine Print a few years ago, and it was really beautiful looking. Like, it was such a beautiful one, and it's supposed to be this really spicy graphic novel about this woman named Lauren who, she's having a bad breakup and she decides to, I can't remember if it's a ritual or it's a spell, but she basically is calling these like sex gods to her to help give her some orgasms and get over her ex-boyfriend or whatever. And she ends up in the middle of some things between some gods and some deities that she just didn't expect herself. And that's where we are. And I know that's a crappy explanation, but you know how graphic novels are if you do. They're really hard to explain without like going into every little bit. But volume 2 finally came out this month. And I couldn't help but buy it. It was very expensive, of course, because it's a full color graphic novel and I got the ebook. But thankfully, I had lots of credits saved up because I always do the like ship together option for Amazon. And I also had some Kindle credits saved up. So it's an $11 ebook. It is expensive, but I had like $7 in credits saved up. So it was basically the same as a regular ebook for me. So there's that. But this was just okay. I didn't really like where the story was going. There is so many characters involved in this, which again, that happens in graphic novels, but I was really interested in Lauren's story. But I also understand if we only focused on Lauren and like getting her the orgasms, then it would be kind of like over pretty quickly. So I get it. But that doesn't change the fact that I was just a little bit like, oh, come on, you know? So I gave it 3.5 stars and it was like a 2 on the spice scale. For it promising to be a spicy graphic novel, there was not much spice at all, and I was sad about it. Okay, next up I read Empire of Sin by Rena Kent. This is one of my 12 recs from 12 friends. This is recommended by Daniela, and this is another Rena Kent that she wanted me to try. And this one is book 2 in the Empire series, and I'd actually read book 1. And it's funny because book 1 was actually the last Rena Kent I read before I was like, I'm done reading Rena Kent. Before I read God of Malice many years later, right? Or a few years later. But she told me that this series got better, and we do start to see too, in this one, we see some of the parents. So this is actually the uncle in this one. This is Knox, and his sister is Teal. His twin sister is Teal, and they're the parents of like Remy from the Legacy of the Gods series. So there is some goodies in there for sure. But this one is an office romance, but it also starts as a one-night stand. Our heroine is Anastasia, and she is on the run from her Bratva family who's trying to use her for things, and so she goes on the run. And yes, you'll recognize some of the Bratva names if you have read those ones or read Legacy of the Gods, because again, these are the parents' generation of a lot of that series. And Anastasia ends up as an IT professional at the law firm that Knox is like a partner at. But first, she wants to have a one-night stand and lose her virginity because her virginity is what was being sold and traded by her family. And she just is like, if I lose it, then I don't got to worry about it. And so she has this hot one-night stand with Knox, and it's super spicy. There's some BDSM elements. She really lets him kind of go to town on her, and they have a hot time. And then the next morning she slips out. She changes how she looks, not because she's hiding from him, but because she's hiding from her family. And then she gets this job. And so what should happen when she goes into her first day at work, but he's there, and she thinks he won't recognize her because she put in contacts and changed her hair. But of course he's like, why is this Anastasia going by a different name? She's a liar. What's going on? And because it's Rena Kent, he immediately is very pissed about it and wants to kind of sexually blackmail her. So it's very Rena Kent of her. And yeah, and there's some other things going on, of course. I did not hate this by any means. There was lots of good stuff. I think part of it too is that I'm a bit disconnected from all of the backlog of characters who showed up in this. And so that means that I didn't like enjoy this as much as if I had just binged a lot of the other books. Again, I recognized names and who people were because I'm reading Legacy of the Gods. But I only vaguely recognized some of the other people from previous books I've read. And this one, I thought the hero softened quickly enough. He definitely has some damage in his past. In fact, one of the trigger warnings is childhood sexual assault that happened. But I thought he softened very well. And Anastasia, she's all full of spit and vinegar and fire for the goodness, and I liked that about her. So this was a good time. I listened to the audiobook, and I gave this one a 4 star, and it's a 3.5 on the spice scale. And I think that of some of the Rena Kents I read outside of Legacy of the Gods, that this was a pretty good one. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Then next up, I had another 12 Recs from 12 Friends. Look at me catching up. I was behind and now I'm caught up. But this was also the Patreon exclusive. So I won't be talking about this book here. But if you happen to see my Instagram story, you'll know that I did really love it. So I read Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. And again, if you check out my Instagram, you'll maybe see how I feel about it. But otherwise, this is an exclusive review for my patrons, which, as I said, if you do the free trial, it is at the $7 level, which is how you'll have access to actually all of the backlist of my reviews, which I believe I've been doing this 2 years now. So there's 23 of them, which is crazy. Like, I didn't even say anything, but it's actually my 6-year anniversary on YouTube and my 2-year anniversary of doing this full time. So that's crazy. Anyway, side note about that. I haven't even thought about doing a post or anything for that yet, but there we go. So yeah, but we'll just say you will see me talk about this one again because of how I felt about it. But this was recommended by Melissa. So thank you so much. I'm sorry it took me so long to get to it, but also it was the right time to read it, and I'm glad that I did. So thank you so much. All right, then we had a fanfic. I actually read 2 fanfics this week, guys. Yeah, I had to squeeze a couple in. So this one was just a quickie though. This was Beneath by Morgan Mercy. Now I have read another one by Morgan Mercy and I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was another spicy one. This one is actually a BDSM Dramini, and Hermione is the dom. I loved that actually. It is a workplace romance and it's very clear they're like attracted to each other, and I like this because he is, you know, trying to make up for what he did before the war, and he's working at the ministry now, and Hermione is starting to get to know him while he's working there, and she actually asks him out, and he's like, oh my gosh, yes, I would love to. And then when they start fooling around, it becomes clear that that he's a bit submissive. And so it's just a little like 5-chapter thing. It's only like 140 pages, but it did have pegging, cock rings, toys, degradation, praise. It had a lot of spicy stuff to squeeze in. So I had a fun time with that. All right, then I listened to an ALC of Skies Over Caledonia by Samantha Young. This is actually my very first Samantha Young, and yes, it was book 4 in a series. But as you know, if you've been following me the last like month or so, I am now doing arcs with a audiobook promotion team that's called Must Love Audio, and they have ALCs and advanced copies of audiobooks. And this is one that I was super intrigued by because it was Shane East and Stella Hunter, and it is a Scottish romance. And I was like, please let me listen to Shane East talk Scottish to me. I am there. And I think for the most part it worked. Obviously there was other characters that I saw, and it made me interested enough that I will read those other books for sure. I definitely will. But this one is book 4, and it comes out in, I think, a couple weeks. I think it comes out May 9th. But I was lucky enough to get to listen to this. And this is a marriage of convenience between Allegra and Jared. From what I can tell, Allegra is the younger sister of one of the previous heroines. Jared is the brother of one of the other heroines, I think. And his farm is in trouble. He's a Scottish farmer, which, hello, do we love Scottish farmers, okay? I have an OG Scottish farmer in my heart. We know it. But Jared was pretty sweet as well. And we have Allegra, who, because her sister lives in Scotland, and she also loves Scotland, she spends as many months a year in Scotland as she can. And immigration has caught on to her. And they're telling her that this will be her last visit because they're like, it appears that you're trying to live here without immigrating officially, and that's not okay. So she's panicking because she'll no longer be able to come here. She's an artist, and she and her sister are also the daughters of these Hollywood types, and she just wants to be able to be there for sure. And so when she hears that Jared is having farm troubles, she has a inheritance. She also has a lot of money from her art, and she's willing to help him fix up his family farm if he will be married to her for 18 months. So there we go. That's the marriage of convenience setup. And this book isn't even out yet, so I won't say any more about it for people who want to read it. But I had a great old time listening to this. I listened to it in basically one sitting, which was wonderful. And it was a 5-star for me. I gave it a 3 on the spice scale. There are some trigger warnings for harm to animals. That these are farm animals, but the harm that comes to them is not the farming kind, if that makes sense, right? Because if you are a farmer's daughter like I am, or you grew up near one or on one, you know that there is certain harm that happens to animals because that's life. But in this book, there's some harm that happens that should not have happened. So just be prepared for that, okay? Be prepared for it. So yeah. All right, next up, I read Seeing Red by Bailey Hannah. This was one I was very much looking forward to since, look at it, it's right here, since I read Alive and Wells just, I guess it was a couple months ago because I was looking, I actually read this for the Romance Takeover Readathon, which was in February, so it was 2 months ago. And Seeing Red is book 2, and this one is an accidental pregnancy, and I read a couple of those this week. I have another one to talk about too. But this accidental pregnancy is between Cassidy, who is upset with her ex-boyfriend, who has brought his new girl to the bar that night, the bar that actually her father owns, and so he knows she's going to be there, and it's kind of like rubbing it in her face. And then Red, aka Chase Thompson, works on the Wells Ranch, right? The series is called Wells Ranch, and he's kind of just seen as the town fuckboy, but he's very good-natured and kind, but people just, they don't take him very seriously. He's a cowboy that people are just kind of like, yeah, Red's there for a good time. Or they don't have great opinions of him because his father was an abusive drunk, okay? And so, yeah, Chase isn't necessarily thought of well, which is sad, sweet Chase. So anyway, what happens is that Cassidy wants a revenge fuck against her ex, and so Chase is willing to do that. And so they have a one-night stand, which leads, of course, to her being pregnant. And then Chase immediately, as soon as he finds out, which by the way, he finds out through other people because she isn't sure if she wants to tell him or not. We'll get back around to that. We'll get back around to it. But as soon as he finds out, he is like, I'm here, I'm there, please let me be involved. I will do everything I can. I want this baby so much. Please let me be a part of it. Okay? And so Cassidy is very resistant to this. She doesn't think that Red will be a good partner. She also doesn't want anyone else involved. But she's 31. She has some issues that may cause her fertility problems. So the fact that she got pregnant accidentally, she's like, I'm not going to miss out on this opportunity to be a mom. And I definitely felt that a lot. 31. I'm 31. She has a few health problems. I have PCOS. I don't know what it'll be like to try to have babies. So yeah, there was a lot that I was sympathetic to with her. Also, body image is a huge part in this one. She's very worried about that, mostly because other people have made her feel worried. Her ex-boyfriend, her doctor, they're always commenting on her weight and saying something. And Chase is just like, babe, just smother me in you. I love it so much. But what ends up happening eventually is they become like a parents with benefits thing. But again, she's very resistant to them. She thinks poorly of Red a lot of the time. And when other people question him, she's questioning him again too. So you can maybe see what my problems with Cassidy were, okay? She is very bitchy right from the beginning, and I know I don't love just using that word to describe women, but I also love a woman who's hard to love. I do. I like reading a story of a woman who has her guard up, who's prickly, who's had things happen to her where she doesn't let people in easily, because I think it's so satisfying when she will fall for the man. Like, I like that a lot. But my problem with Cassidy is that from day effing one that Chase finds out, he is nothing if not devoted, and he cooks for her. He rubs her feet. He is there for her emotionally. He is there to back her up when people give her shit. He is constantly there, and she is ashamed of him in the beginning. She doesn't want anyone to know she's pregnant by him. She'd rather people think it's her shitty ex-boyfriend who cheated on her would know than admit that Chase Thompson, who I don't care what other people's reputation is, she sees what he's like. You know, I guess part of it's supposed to be because she knew him from when they were kids and didn't have, you know, the best thought of him. But by the time a certain point in this book, you know, a certain amount of weeks into this, she should know what type of character this man has. And this man does nothing but crawl on his belly for this girl, and she still doesn't stand up for him when he needs it. It takes her a lot of time. So you can tell, like, my feelings started to get more annoying with her as we went on. And when I got to a certain point in the book, I was like, okay, Cassidy, you need to grovel for this man or I'm out. Like, I'm empathetic to you. I see what you're going through, but Red, you need to have his back, like, now, and I need you to grovel for what you've said and done and made him feel. Because they do have this very, like, she teases him all the time, and there's a certain point where that goes from her being mean to him being like, I love that she teases me, that's fine. But she never says anything good until a certain point, and I was just like, why does this man have to put up with this? Like, why does he have to put up with you talking to him like this when he does nothing but build you up? He does nothing but worship your feet and worship your pussy and worship everything about you. And you are just like, I don't know, maybe we'll stay together, maybe we won't. And I was just so over it by a certain point. I'm begrudging the point a little more than I need to, but I just want you to understand my level of frustration, because she does have a turn. Of course she does. Of course she realizes how great he is. And I don't think it's too little too late. In the grand scheme of things, you know, a 9-month period of your life is not all of it, for sure. So I warmed up to her a bit by the end of this. Of course I did. And she has a tough pregnancy. She is, like I said, constantly questioned. And her dad, who is a super supportive, wonderful dad, he is not supportive of Chase at all. He has memories of Chase's dad and how much trouble he was. And so he's like, I don't want this man around my daughter. And I feel like the dad went overboard, because it's like, your daughter's 31 and she's telling you this guy is good. And you've only... You know, I don't know. It was a lot. The dad went overboard. It was just a lot for me. But it ended up, of course, she wins me over by the end. And I settled at a 3, or no. Sorry. I settled at a 4-star, and it's a 3 on the spice scale. Sorry, 3.5 on the spice scale. I didn't settle at a 3. I didn't dislike it that much. No. But I wanted this to be a 5, like, so bad, because I loved the first one so much. But in that one, I feel like the heroine had more reason to be hesitant about a relationship due to the fact that she'd been abused by her husband. And this heroine, yeah, she had a guy cheat on her, but she has a prince who loves her and a dad who's super supportive and loves her too. So it's not like she has a reason to, like, you know, she knows men can be good dads, right? So, anyway, I was not annoyed at it by the end as I was, but I went through a period where I was like, Cassidy, you're taking this too far, babe. You're taking it too far. But you know what? Red loves her, and I can love her too. So this one was a 4-star, and it was fun. He was very sexy. One of the kinks that he has is he likes to clean up behind himself. We'll just say that. There's lots of dirty talk. There's some toys used, and he always likes to clean her up at the end with his mouth. Yeah. That happens. It was pretty hot. It was pretty hot. I won't pretend it wasn't. Okay, just a couple left here. I reread Him by Elle Kennedy and Serena Bowen, so I won't talk much about this because I've recommended this plenty of times, but I reread this for one of my patrons. I annotated it. It was great revisiting Jamie and Wes, and seeing the bi-awakening we had for Jamie, and seeing Wes finally get the man that he has loved for years. And yeah, it's a great start. I will be reading the next one next month too, so we'll continue with them. But I enjoyed this one so much. And then the last one that I finished is, as I said, another accidental pregnancy, but this one was a fan fiction and I loved it. It was so good. This one was Mind the Bump by Soap One was the name of the author. And this one is actually a single dad, widower Draco. He actually lost Astoria in the pregnancy because there was some magical complications. So we have sweet baby Scorp, who's like 5 years old. He's the cutest, most precious baby ever. All right. If you love baby Scorp in fanfics, you will love this. But Hermione and Draco are both at an event that Theo is holding, I think, and she hasn't spoken with him in a while. They both work at the ministry, but they don't interact, and they end up talking each other up because neither of them really wants to be there, but they are like, wow, what's going on? This chemistry is great, and they end up having a hookup, and it's hot. It's great. They enjoy themselves, but they realize soon after when she discovers she's pregnant that neither of them was on the potion because I love when this happens in there, but both men and women can take birth control in the magical world because that's amazing. But neither of them was, and they thought the other one was, which that just goes to show, you know, we might think it's awkward in books when people have to have the birth control conversation mid-sex, but that's why you do, so that you know if you got to wrap it up or do a spell or whatever you need to do, right? But she's pregnant, and of course he wants to be involved, but he's also very nervous, right? Because he lost his wife to a pregnancy and he's not fully over it. It's very hard. Astoria, you know, he'd been with her since they were kids basically, and she was like his best friend and he cared for her so much. So to lose her, it was really hard. And now to have Hermione, who, you know, he didn't think he'd ever get a second chance, and now she's pregnant. And not only is she pregnant, it's the same type of pregnancy as Astoria had. In this little fanfic, there is this magically connected, magically entwined pregnancy where as the pregnancy gets stronger and stronger, Draco can't be far away from her. If he is further than like literally 100 feet away from her, she starts having like horrible pain. And so as she gets further along, they basically have to be by each other all the time. And when the mother will have this magical pregnancy, sometimes the like kind of the like breaking of the baby's magic to like be on their own from that can cause the mother to die, and there's nothing you can do. So Draco is of course very worried about that. But yeah, and also, you know, she ends up having to move into Malfoy Manor, and little Scorpius is obsessed. It's so cute. It's so cute. The way that he's excited for his little sibling to be coming, and the way that he just immediately loves Hermione is just so like, I love baby Scorpius, okay? I love him so much when he's cute like this. And she basically has to move in. And not only move in, but like be in a bedroom that's like right next to his, and eventually, you know, even closer than that. So, you know, this was just supposed to be a one-night stand for them, and now she literally is living in his home just a couple months later. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought there was, of course, there's a little suspense plot thrown in to do with time turners that just didn't need to be there. But I gave this 4.5 stars, and it's a 2.5 for me on the spice scale. It was really great. So I'll have links to all these books I talked about down below, including the fanfics. If you want to read either of the fics, I'll have the link right to the fic down below, so you can go to it and read it there if you want. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure, as I said, to check out my channel memberships and the Patreon if you'd like to support me, or as simple as like this, comment which book you're interested to see, what you're reading, and we'll see you in the next one.